The air was hot, too hot. It felt like the very atmosphere was on fire, suffocating and relentless. The heat wave had been relentless for days, but today was different. Today there was a sense of impending doom. Sarah watched from her porch as smoke filled the sky. The once clear blue expanse was now a murky gray, a harbinger of the chaos that was unfolding. She could feel the tension in the air, a tangible sense of fear and uncertainty. The forest, usually so green and alive, was now a canvas of angry orange. Flames danced and leaped, consuming everything in their path with a ferocity that was both mesmerizing and terrifying. The beauty of nature was being replaced by a scene of utter devastation. Her son Jake played in the yard, oblivious to the danger lurking miles away. His laughter, usually a source of joy, now seemed out of place, a stark contrast to the grim reality that was closing in on them. A strange wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of ash and fear. It was as if the wind itself was warning them, whispering tales of destruction and urging them to flee. The air was thick with tension, every breath a reminder of the danger that loomed. It whispered tales of a wildfire growing ever stronger, consuming everything in its path. The fire was relentless, an unstoppable force that showed no mercy. It was a living, breathing entity, feeding on the land and growing more powerful with each passing moment. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. The fear was almost paralyzing, but she knew she couldn't afford to freeze. She had to protect her family to get them to safety before it was too late. She needed to act fast. Every second counted, and hesitation could mean the difference between life and death. She sprang into action, her mind racing with 1,000 thoughts, but her body moving with a singular purpose. Grabbing Jake's hand, she pulled him inside. The urgency in her movements was clear, and Jake, sensing the gravity of the situation, didn't resist. He looked up at her with wide eyes, filled with questions that she didn't have time to answer. "Emergency, Jake! We need to go! Now!" she said, her voice shaking. The words felt heavy, laden with the weight of the situation. She needed him to understand the urgency, to move quickly and without question. They rushed to gather essentials: water, food, a family photo. Every item they grabbed felt like a lifeline, a piece of their lives that they couldn't bear to leave behind. The house, once a sanctuary, now felt like a trap. Every second felt like an eternity. The ticking of the clock was a cruel reminder of the time slipping away, of the fire drawing ever closer. They had to move, and they had to move now. Outside, the sky grew darker, the sun a hazy orb behind the smoke. It was as if the world itself was closing in, the darkness a prelude to the chaos that was about to unfold. The once familiar landscape was now alien and threatening. The roar of the fire echoed in the distance, growing louder with each passing moment. It was a sound that filled them with dread, a constant reminder of the danger that was rapidly approaching. The fire was a beast, and it was hungry. Sarah held Jake close, her fear palpable. She could feel his small body trembling against hers, and she wished she could shield him from the terror that was unfolding. But all she could do was hold him tight and hope for the best. They piled into the car, her hands trembling as she fumbled with the keys. The engine roared to life, a small victory in the midst of chaos. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves, knowing that they had to get out of there. As they drove away, she cast one last glance at their home, a silent prayer escaping her lips. The fire was close, too close. She hoped they would have something to return to, but for now, all that mattered was getting her family to safety. The road was choked with panicked families, their cars laden with belongings. The air was thick with smoke, making it hard to breathe, and the sky was an ominous shade of orange. The urgency was palpable, as everyone knew that time was running out. Fear hung heavy in the air, a suffocating blanket. Faces were etched with worry, eyes darting around, searching for any sign of hope or escape. The tension was almost unbearable. Sarah honked the horn, her heart racing. She glanced at her son in the back seat, his wide eyes reflecting her own terror. She knew she had to stay strong for him, but the fear was overwhelming. Every minute felt like an hour as they inched forward, the flames growing closer. The heat was intense and the smell of burning wood filled the air. It was a race against time, and they were losing. Suddenly a wall of fire erupted beside the road, flames leaping towards the sky. The roar of the fire was deafening and the heat was almost unbearable. It felt like the end of the world. Jake screamed, burying his face in Sarah's arm. His small body trembled with fear, and Sarah's heart broke for him. She whispered soothing words, trying to calm him down, but her own voice was shaking. She held him tight, whispering reassurances she barely felt herself. The world outside was chaos, but inside the car, she tried to create a bubble of safety for her son. Through the smoke-filled windshield, a figure emerged. It was hard to see clearly, but the outline of a firefighter became apparent. Relief washed over Sarah, but it was tinged with fear. A firefighter, his face grim but determined, directed traffic, his voice booming over the roar of the flames. His presence was a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. He banged on Sarah's car window, urgency in his eyes. She rolled down the window, her hands shaking. "You're heading into the fire. Take the back road, it's your only chance," he yelled. His voice was firm, leaving no room for doubt. Sarah, her face streaked with tears and ash, nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew she had to trust him, even though the fear was paralyzing. She swerved the car onto the dirt road, the firefighter's words echoing in her ears. The path was rough, but it was their only hope of escape. "Don't worry, ma'am, we'll protect your town." The firefighter's words were a promise, a lifeline in the midst of the inferno. Sarah clung to that promise as she drove into the unknown. The back road was a treacherous escape route, narrow and winding. The air was thick with smoke, making it almost impossible to see. Sarah gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white with tension. Jake was silent beside her, his small hand clutching hers. They reached a checkpoint, a haven of flashing lights and hurried activity. Exhausted and terrified, Sarah and Jake stumbled out of the car. The firefighter, his face smudged with soot, approached them. "You're safe now, ma'am," he said, his voice raspy but kind. "We'll get you to a shelter." He looked at Jake, his eyes softening. "Don't worry, son," he said, kneeling down. "We're gonna beat this fire. I promise you, your house will be safe." Jake, his eyes wide with fear and hope, nodded silently. Sarah, overwhelmed with gratitude, could only manage a choked "thank you." The firefighter's words, a beacon of hope in the darkness, stayed with them. The shelter was crowded, filled with families huddled together, their faces etched with worry and exhaustion. The air buzzed with a mixture of fear and hope. Sarah held Jake close, trying to shield him from the despair that hung heavy in the air. The night stretched on, each tick of the clock a painful reminder of the inferno raging outside. News trickled in, snippets of information about the fire's relentless advance. Sarah listened intently, her heart sinking with each grim update. Sleep was impossible. She clung to the firefighter's promise, repeating his words like a mantra. "Your house will be safe, your house will be safe." Jake, exhausted from the day's trauma, finally fell asleep, his head resting on her lap. Sarah gently stroked his hair, her own fear and uncertainty battling with a flicker of hope. Morning arrived, painting the sky in hues of gray and orange. The air, thick with smoke, carried the acrid scent of burning wood. Sarah and Jake joined the throng of evacuees gathered around a bulletin board, their faces a mixture of hope and despair as they scanned the lists of damaged or destroyed homes. Each name read aloud felt like a punch to the gut. Sarah scanned the list, her heart pounding in her chest. Where they lived wasn't listed yet. She clung to the firefighter's words, a lifeline in the sea of uncertainty. Hours turned into an agonizing wait. The fire was still burning, although firefighters were making progress. Rumors spread like wildfire themselves, stories of heroism and loss, of homes saved and families torn apart. Sarah held on to Jake, her voice trembling as she reassured him that everything would be all right. Section 6. A Glimmer of Hope. As the sun began to set, a figure emerged from the smoke-filled haze. It was the firefighter, his face weary but his eyes shining with a determined light. He made his way through the crowd, his presence radiating a sense of calm amidst the chaos. He approached Sarah and Jake, a tired smile spreading across his soot-stained face. "You remember me?" he asked Jake, kneeling down. Jake nodded, his eyes widening in recognition. "I have some good news," the firefighter said, his voice hoarse but reassuring. "The fire has been contained. It was a long, hard fight, but we managed to save your town." Relief washed over Sarah, so profound it made her knees weak. Section 7. Reunion at Dawn. The next morning, the air was thick with the smell of damp earth and smoke. The remnants of the wildfire still lingered in the atmosphere, a haunting reminder of the chaos that had unfolded just hours before. The ground was wet from the efforts of the firefighters, who had worked tirelessly through the night to contain the blaze. The rising sun painted the sky in soft hues of pink and orange, a stark contrast to the fiery inferno of the day before. It was as if nature itself was trying to heal the wounds inflicted upon the land. The beauty of the sunrise brought a sense of calm and hope to the weary souls who had witnessed the devastation. The evacuation order had been lifted and families were slowly making their way back to their homes. The roads were filled with cars, each carrying anxious passengers eager to see what remained of their lives. The sense of community was palpable as neighbors greeted each other with hugs and shared stories of their harrowing experiences. Sarah held Jake's hand tight as they drove through the streets. The silence between them was heavy with unspoken fears and hopes. They passed by familiar landmarks, now unrecognizable, transformed by the fire's wrath. Each turn brought them closer to their home, and the tension in the car grew with every mile. The fire had left its mark. Charred trees lined the road, and some houses were reduced to smoldering ruins. The landscape was a patchwork of destruction, with some areas completely devastated while others remained miraculously untouched. It was a sobering sight, a testament to the fire's unpredictable nature. But amidst the destruction, there were also signs of hope: firefighters clearing debris, neighbors helping each other, and the resilient spirit of a community determined to rebuild. Volunteers handed out supplies and local businesses offered their services to those in need. The sense of solidarity was strong, and it was clear that this community would not be easily broken. As they approached their home, Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. She held her breath, afraid of what she might see. The journey had been long and filled with uncertainty, but now the moment of truth was upon them. She squeezed Jake's hand tighter, drawing strength from his presence. And then she saw it. Their house, untouched by the fire, stood as a beacon of hope amidst the devastation. It was a miracle, a small piece of normalcy in a world turned upside down. The sight of their home brought a flood of emotions, a mix of relief, gratitude, and sorrow for those who had not been as fortunate. Tears welled up in her eyes as she pulled Jake into a tight embrace. The weight of the past few days lifted, replaced by a profound sense of relief. They had made it through the worst, and now, standing in front of their home, they could begin to rebuild their lives. The journey ahead would be long, but they would face it together, with the strength of their community behind them. Section 8. The Firefighter's Promise. Standing on their porch, Sarah saw the firefighter one last time. He was directing traffic, ensuring the safe return of the evacuees. He saw her and Jake, a tired but genuine smile spreading across his face. He gave them a thumbs up, a silent acknowledgement of their shared experience. He kept his promise. "Mom," Jake said, his voice filled with awe. Sarah nodded, her throat tight with emotion. The firefighter, a symbol of courage and selflessness, had not only saved their town, but also reaffirmed their faith in humanity. His promise, forged in the heart of the wildfire, would forever be etched in their memory, a testament to the unwavering spirit of those who face danger head-on to protect their communities. Section 9. Scars and New Beginnings. Life slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. The community rallied together, helping each other rebuild their lives and their town. Scars of the fire remained: charred trees, empty lots where houses once stood, and the lingering smell of smoke in the air. But amidst the scars, there was also a sense of gratitude, a newfound appreciation for the preciousness of life and the strength of the human spirit. The wildfire had tested them, pushed them to their limits, but it had also brought them together, forging unbreakable bonds of community and resilience. And somewhere in the heart of it all, Sarah knew that the firefighter, a silent guardian in the face of danger, was out there, continuing to protect and serve, his promise echoing in the hearts of those he had saved.